Hello, as you know, I'm Blackbright and I'm doing a series of interviews of key people in Luton. And I've chosen today to interview my daughter Dion, who many see her as someone glamorous, so they see her out, but not many people know what a responsible job she has and how she influences the Luton community. So I thought I would interview her today. And so, yes. So, Dion, regardless of where we're born, um, because this is about Lutonians, it's very interesting how people end up in Luton. And I just wanted you to share with our viewers how you ended up in Luton and as an adult, why you have chosen to remain in Luton.
Okay, so it was actually a housing opportunity that made me come to Luton. I was living in London, or my family was in London, and I was living in a housing association accommodation, and they said they would give, at that time, they were giving 16,000 as a deposit for a house if you chose. So my auntie was doing the same scheme, and she said to me, Dion, why don't you do the scheme? So I got the scheme money, and that was the deposit for me to be able to purchase a house.
Wow, that is really interesting. Most people say, "Oh, it's because it's cheaper housing," but yeah, that is a very good reason, and it's what put you on the property ladder.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a real achievement. Not many young people are able to um, achieve that. So, how has the house? Has it been a burden for you, or have you managed? With we know that interest rates are coming up and things like that. How has managing your house, the responsibility of managing your house, how have you found that?
Well, I'd have to say it's by the grace of God, because when I first came to Luton, obviously I didn't have employment in Luton, and I had to find employment very quickly. And I remember looking in the local newspapers, and there was a lady that was starting up her business, and she was doing the business from her house. And I went for my interview, and I basically said to her, "Look, I've got a," because I also had a 5-year-old daughter at the time, I think she was 4 or 5. And I basically said to this lady, "Look, I need to be able to pay my mortgage. So I really need this job." And bless her, the job was looking after people with learning disabilities. I didn't really have any experience, except I told her that I had an uncle that had learning disabilities. And she said, "Don't worry, Dion, I will give you a job." And she did.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's talk about landing on your feet. And so, what does Luton mean to you?
I haven't really thought about what Luton means to me.
Like some people, they say there's a stigma attached to Luton. Some people like it because it's cultural diversity and those kind of things. Do you have any thoughts about what Luton means to you?
I guess I like Luton because, as I said, I came here by myself with a 5-year-old. And one of my very first experiences of Luton was I was at a bus stop, and I had my daughter, and I also had my sister's son that I was looking after. And I also had shopping bags. So you can imagine I've got a pram, I've got a 4-year-old, I've got a baby, and I'm standing at the bus stop. And this lady, she was a black lady, stopped at the bus stop, and she said, Do you need a lift? And
Wow,
yeah, and she gave me a lift home, and I thought, wow,
that's so moving.
yeah, I thought the people in Luton are so friendly. And I guess that has been my experience of Luton, that through my lifetime in Luton, people have gone over and above to get me where I am today.
Wow. I mean, that's quite an emotional revelation, to be honest. And yeah, you really are blessed. So, who is Dionne Innerarity?
I wish I knew myself, to be honest. Who is Dionne Innerarity? Well, she's a mother, although my daughter has passed. Um, she's a drug and alcohol counsellor. I I see myself as a teacher, even though I don't have a teaching qualification. I do see myself as a teacher. I teach people different things all the time. I would say I'm knowledgeable. I've done a lot of studying. I would say I'm beautiful. My mum will agree. I'm always looking in the mirror and saying, I'm so beautiful. But I never used to feel like that. So it's not something out of vanity why I say that. It's because I never used to feel beautiful. So now I remind myself that I am. She's a loving and she's a caring person. She loves helping people and she loves to give people advice.
Oh, that's beautiful. So, what can you tell me a little bit about your adolescent life and early adult that shaped you into the person you are today?
Um, my childhood. Well, at a very young age, I remember I I didn't want to go to my childminders anymore. And I remember saying to my mum, I really don't want to go to the childminders. I was having problems at the childminders, but I didn't tell my mum at the time. I think the childminder was a bit racist, and she would give her grandson like fish and chips, and she would give me this awful bovril for my tea or whatever it was that she used to give me. And I used to hate it there. The little boy would bully me and I used to hate it. So I went to my mum and I said, I really don't want to go to the childminders anymore. I can walk home from school by myself. And my mum gave me the key. And I guess that taught me responsibility. You know, I had responsibility at a very early age, and I don't think that was a bad thing.
Mhm.
I think during my life, my mum shared a lot with me, and I kept that for when I had my own daughter. I didn't hide things from her because I think that helps you to be a bit more wise when you are younger. So I didn't fall into the usual traps of having sex early or being manipulated by boys. I'm not saying I wasn't a little bit manipulated, but not in the way that some girls can be manipulated because my mum had educated me on what boys can be like. And so I didn't fall into that trap of falling in love and having sex with someone and an early pregnancy. That's not what happened. So I think that kind of molded me so that I thought when I was older I chose the right person because I thought you can't go wrong with a pastor's son. Won't make any comments about that. But, I think it helped me to make some good decisions, even though there were some difficulties in my childhood. Um, I think I've made good decisions. I think if I look back, obviously everybody has times in their life where they wish they didn't do this and they wish they didn't do that. But generally, when it's been important, I think I made good decisions. So one of the good decisions that I made was when I was 18 and I was living at home with my mum. And I'd asked my mum a couple of weeks before if I could go and see what England was like. We were living in America, and I said, "Can I go and see what England was like?" And my intention was to move to England. So on the way to the airport, I don't know why I left my passport at home, and I missed that flight. And so then it was a choice of, well, Mum said she couldn't afford to buy a Nava ticket just for me to go and see what England was like. I had to make a decision to go back to England for good this time. And that's what I did. I made the decision. I said, okay, then I want to go. Because my heart wasn't in America, my heart was in England. And I'd say that was a good decision. Even though it was rocky to start, it was a good decision because my heart is really in England. And I was only 18 at the time. And I do not regret that choice.
Wow, I'm finding this quite moving, this interview. So, let me see. You work with alcohol and drugs, like you said before, and use a variety of therapeutic techniques to help you heal your clients. Do you want to share some of the techniques that you use that makes your job so interesting? Because you've been there quite a while. How long have you been a drug and alcohol worker?
I've done it about 11 years now, since
Wow,
2010.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what I'd like to say is that whilst working in alcohol and drug services over the last 11 years, I noticed there was a gap. And as you work with people, you start to notice that there's gaps in service. We try to do, or whoever tries to do their best to meet people's needs, but there's always a gap. So I decided to make myself a bridge to that gap. And so what that meant was finding the areas that there wasn't support. So particularly for people with borderline personality or mental health. I'm not talking about extreme mental health, but I'm talking about people that are living out in the community but still struggling with mental health. Now, the mental health service is very, very busy. There are often, I think, long waiting lists or people that they cannot access the way that maybe mental health services would like to, or I don't know because I don't work in that service per se. So, but I noticed there were a lot of people that needed support and help, and they wasn't getting that support and help. So what I decided to do is educate myself. And I did that through online training, going to courses, reading books. And so I developed lots of different skills to be able to help and support. And also, I began to have more of an understanding about mental health and how people are affected through mental health.
Wow, that's really interesting. So, what do you think your biggest obstacle was, and how did you manage to overcome
My biggest obstacle has been myself,
it? Okay.
getting in my own way. I think over the years, you learn that childhood trauma or adult trauma or things that have happened to you along the way, they affect you.
Hmm.
And so what can happen is you can start to self-sabotage. So I think my journey started in the church. That was the beginning of my journey. And I remember this lady at the church, and she said to me, Dion, you you have ambition. She said, because I think I must have said to her, I don't have any ambition, because that's what I believed about myself. And she said, Dion, you have ambition. She said, I want you to keep repeating it. And I had to say, I have got ambition, I have got ambition. Then I started to get really, really angry, and I was crying. And she just kept on making me say it. She said, you've got to believe it. She said, you've got to believe that you have ambition. And so before that, I'd never had the qualification before. It wasn't something that I thought I could achieve. It wasn't something that I thought I would ever do. And through this other lady at work, my manager, who pushed me and said, Dion, you're going to do this qualification whether you like it or not. I got my first qualification, and that was as an alcohol and drug specialist. And I thought, wow, Dionne Innerarity is a specialist in something. Who knew?
Mm.
And so that started a series of me starting to develop myself. And now the significant thing that happened in my life is my relationship with God, which I, don't make no secrets about. And I remember I was writing something down and I was having a conversation with God. And God said to me, you don't love yourself. Now, if you know me, you know I'm in the mirror saying, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful. And I thought, how can I not love myself? That doesn't make any sense. And God said to me, if you loved yourself, why would you let the men in your life treat you the way they do? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, the person that you're in a relationship with now, would you choose that person for your daughter? And I was taken aback. And I thought, no, I wouldn't. So he said, well, why would I choose that person for you? And so that's when I started to realise that I had to love myself. And so God's been unpeeling layers and peeling layers and unpeeling layers. And when you have a relationship with God, that's what he does. He starts unpeeling like an onion, not all in one go, but you can guarantee he's going to challenge you and he's going to show you all the things that are buried deep. And so moving a lot forward, I started to do some group work. And while I was doing the group work, I started uncovering more about myself. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm only learning this now, at however old I was at the time, so it was about 45 or 44, I said, if I'm learning this stuff now, imagine if I learnt this stuff when I was in my 20s. Wouldn't it be so useful to be able to teach people these things? They're really simple things. And they're things that when you think about it, you should know, but somehow we don't know. And so that's when my teaching began. I began to start really teaching my clients life skills. And I would feel really rewarded when they would say, Dion, you've changed my life, or Dion, you've really, really helped me, or Dion, I didn't know that. And yeah, that was the journey.
Wow. So, how do you normally cope with your challenges in your day-to-day life?
Now that's got to be by the grace of God. Definitely. I don't think I would be here today without him. And the reason why I say that is because there are times when you're going through things, and for the greatness of people, they're just not there. And it's no fault of their own. Especially now, life is busy. And so I've had times where I've cried. I've thought I can't do it. I've been angry, or however it is, the emotions that you feel. And I remember God gave me a scripture. And the scripture is Jeremiah, from Jeremiah 29:11. I think that is it. And it says, the plans I have for you are for good, not for evil. They're to give you a hope and a future. I can't remember the exact, but it's something, it says something along that line. I've got it written up in my room. But that's what I remind myself. I remind myself when I'm going through stuff that there is a purpose to what you're going through, especially the difficult times. There's a purpose you're going. And I now understand that when you go through something, it's a testimony to somebody else to help them through. And also the plans that God, obviously now being nearly 49, I can now see the fruition of God's plans that he had for me way back when I was about 20. And the reason why I'm going back is just to show you the plan. So that when I was 20, that was around the time, I think I was 21, 22, that was around the time I was moving into the house.
Mm.
And I remember there was a point where I thought, I can't do this. What am I doing? I'm leaving my family. I'm going with a 4-year-old. What am I doing? I can't do it. And this lady stopped me on the street and she said, she was a gypsy woman. She said, I can see you moving and I can also see a ring on your finger. And I thought, wow, you know, I wasn't really, I was into God that time, but not the way that I am now, understand the relationship. But I remember that was a lady that was fundamental in me moving. And so moving forward now, at 47, I think it was 47, I paid off my mortgage. So that was the plan that God had for me. And so for 25 years, God provided for me to be able to pay my mortgage. How many people have lost their houses?
Yeah.
How many people have not been able to pay their mortgage? How many people go into an environment and just get a job straight away? Do you see what I mean? So now I can see the fruition of the plans that God, when God has made me move into something and I haven't wanted to, you know, even doing the job that I do now, I did not want to do this job. But it was like a push. This is where you're going. This is what you have to do. And so now I can understand the fruition.
And I was also thinking when I was thinking about overcoming challenges, how when you're at work and you have a new process and you actually create operating procedures and guidances for not only yourself but your teams, so that they can actually see, if you're going to try and work in a certain way, the steps that you've got to take. And that is another way that I see you as overcoming those kind of challenges, where you might not know something one way, but then you'll create a document that will do a step-by-step process, so that you don't have to keep asking somebody else, that you can actually pass on to other colleagues. So tell us a little bit about that process that you go through when you are creating those documents.
Well, as I said, when I first started in drug services, I came from having no qualifications at all. And so my agency said to me at the time, Dion, just go to this alcohol service. And I said, no, I can't think of anything worse. And she said, yeah, just go, but you'll only be there for a week. And the only experience I had was my daughter's father, who had alcohol and drug problems. And I said that to the agency at the time. That's the only experience I got. She said, you'll be all right. So I went in there, but I felt so inexperienced compared to everybody else. And I remember they said to me at that time, Dion, go and run a group, and I felt sick. And I was going to call in sick from work. I said, no, Dion, you've got to go. You can't do that. Because I'm the kind of person that if I say I'm going to do something, I like to do it. And so I thought, no, I can't do that. But I remember that experience of feeling so inexperienced and going into a situation that I felt so uncomfortable. It was fine, but what I learned from there is how other people might be feeling. And so that was the start of me building as I gained more, because I basically was self-taught. I basically watched loads and loads of videos. This was before I got my qualification. I basically watched loads and loads of videos, done loads and loads of research, and learnt a lot from my clients as well, and learnt along the way. And that was my first thought in that job, to do a manual. What I thought was a manual. Later I understand it's now standard operation procedures, but at the time I never knew that's what it was. I thought it was a manual for people, staff, when they come into a new job. Because often when you start
Two
a
of
new
them are
job...
still the same, though. A manual and a soft standard is the same.
Okay. And so I thought when somebody comes into a new job, people don't always have the time to show you the little ins and outs of the job. What they do when you come into drug services, they give you policies about this thick, and you have to spend days reading it, and there's no way you're going to take in that information. And you get so much information in such a short period of time that you don't really get time to process things. Or sometimes they'll say, we'll give you some training. And if anybody's anything like me, they give you the training, say last week, by this week I've forgotten. And so I started to document the things that I felt were important, the day-to-day things that staff could just have a look at and they could know how to basically do their job.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, let me see what else. How do you think people who know you perceive you? Have you got any idea?
I'm laughing because I often think, I wonder how I come across. And would anyone dare to tell me? But the answer is I don't truly know. I know what people have told me. And maybe a little bit of me thinks it's the British culture to be polite. But they always say I'm knowledgeable. And I know that people will come to me, often at work. I'm the person that people will come to when they want to know how to do something. And they'll say, Dionne, it's because you're so knowledgeable. Or Dion, it's because I know I can get this information from you. Or Dion, I know it's because you will help me. So I guess I come across as helpful. I probably come across sometimes a little bit talk too much because I get excited, especially when there's discussions. I get really, really excited and I like to get my point across, and I sometimes might talk, keep wanting to talk and keep wanting to ask questions because sometimes I want to understand. And the only way I can understand properly is if I ask questions. So sometimes I probably maybe ask a bit too many questions. People comment on the way that I dress over the years. And that's because no matter what the job I've done, I've always been glamorous, as they would call it. And so they would probably say I'm very glamorous.
Okay. So how do you want people to remember you? Lots of people don't really think that. But if you just suppose you had an epitaph and you're outside looking in, how would you like people to remember you?
Sorry, what's an epitaph?
Epitaph is, like when people say something, when people have passed over. What would you want people to say about you? Things that they'd remember you for and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I have given that some thought. And I remember I would pray, Lord, please give me wisdom. I want to be like Moses. And so I would definitely want to be remembered for doing good, for being helpful. I would hope that I would be remembered as a child of God, even though I'm not probably your, what do you call
Typical.
it? Yeah, typical in quotes, typical Christian. And I know that because people have often assumed that I'm not. And so I would like to be remembered for being a child of God. I would like to remember for wisdom and for how I've helped people and hopefully how I can change people's life and how I have changed people's life. And I hope that I make an impact in a positive way, like a big impact, change. Although you can't change all of humanity, but change a be a fundamental part of changing humanity.
Wow, that's very interesting. And to close, some words of wisdom to anyone who might feel discouraged or dispirited, especially with what's going on in society today with the variant and that kind of thing.
Okay, I've actually got a quote that I came across the other day, so I'm just going to read it. So, your anger it's telling you where you feel powerless. Your anxiety is telling you that something in your life is off balance. Your fear is telling you what you care about. Your apathy is telling you where you are overextended and burnt out. Your feelings aren't random, they are messengers. And if you want to get anywhere, you need to be able to let them speak to you and tell you what you really need.
Oh, wow. That's really good. So that says it all, really. You don't have to say anything, do you?
No?
Well, is there anything you wanted to add that I...
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, then. Well, that is Dionne Innerarity for the Luton series, leading people in the Luton community. And yes, I hope you're enjoying this series. Bye-bye.